It was 1995 and Yasuo Yamada is in the hospital before he recorded the farewell to Nostradamus. Despite knowing fans wouldn't be too happy about this predicament, TMS needed a temporary replacement immediately. Luckily for them, there were two potential replacements. First off was Yoshito Yasuhara. He's had experience with voice acting before and trained under Yamada, so he could have had the ability to voice the thief. But for whatever reason, he wasn't chosen. Instead, TMS picked the second one, Kanichi Kurita. Unlike Yasuhara, Kurita never officially voiced anything for anime up to that point. Heck, he was a comedian and impressionist, which led to him imitating Lupin III, leading him to becoming friends with Yasuo Yamada. But when Yamada fell ill, TMS asked for Kurita to fill in for the character, which must have made him nervous considering he had no voice acting training. He was an impersonator. Regardless, he took the role and tried to make it his own until Yamada got better. Except there was one problem. He never got better. In fact, he died. And so, Kanichi Kurita, even if he never wanted to, would become the fifth person to voice Lupin, but the second to be permanent, and has since voiced him in future Lupin media. In fact, it's the only voice role he ever does, save for a dub voice of a US series. Yeah, I'm surprised too. But anyway, with that intro out of the way, let's begin the review. Lupin III, Farewell to Nostradamus, also known as Die Nostradamus, and To Hell with Nostradamus, is the fourth animated Lupin movie released in theaters on the 31st of March, 1995. The year is 1999. A nuclear submarine blows up and a man named Risley, head of an apocalyptic cult, reveals to the public that this attack and more were foretold in the prophecies of Nostradamus. Though his plan is so much more, as the book he has is the fake book of Nostradamus as discovered by Goemon. The real book is held at the Earth Building, a huge tower owned by Richard Nixon lookalike Douglas, a billionaire who is set to become the next president of the United States.
Shut your fucking mouth! No problem, Charles. Shut the fuck up, you cunt! Shut it!
Unrelated video aside, Risley's plan is getting his henchman Chris to kidnap Douglas's daughter Julia, with the ransom being not money, but for Douglas to drop out of the presidential race if he ever wants to see his daughter again. Meanwhile, Lupin and Jigen steal a diamond worth over $1 million, a typical Tuesday for the thief. But after being caught by Pops in his off time, they run from him and get on a plane, the same one that has the best of the Brazilian football players as the US is holding the World Cup. Because of course I'm writing and recording this review when the World Cup is currently taking place in the US, whose president is a billionaire and has a big tower. What a weird case of future-proofing, I'll tell ya. In fact, the movie took place in 1999 because TMS didn't know when the 2000 Summer Olympics was being held at after the US 1996 Summer Olympics. The answer was in Sydney, Australia, by the way. Home of the Killer Spiders, Fosters, Steve Irwin, that woman who debunks crap social media recipes, and bad breakdancing. But to summarise more of the plot, some blokes hold the plane hostage with a bomb, Lupin finds a way to stop them, Pops tries to defuse the bomb and fails, Julie gets kidnapped and Lupin along with the rest of the gang go save her because she's worth more than the diamond Lupin stuffed inside Julie's doll, and if they rescue the girl, they also gain access to the real book of Nostradamus. But Risley also wants the book too, and is the reason why he hires Chris and his army of blokes to find a way to get it by any means necessary. So, a question. How can a movie be highly entertaining but also be very mediocre? It's a weird one to review because this is a good movie but has more or less the same issues as Bye Bye Liberty Close Call, an ambitious plot with too much plot points going on and lacking focus on the major aspects. And there's a kid in this one too, as well as a cult. It's not the first time Lupin has been involved in taking down a cult, and this one feels rather old hat. A powerful man who is actually a fraud kind of villain. Risley, from the moment you see him at the start of the movie, you know he's the main antagonist. He speaks of doom and gloom, but you instantly know he's the cause of said doom. Rasputin he ain't. And yet the movie tries to keep it a mystery until the reveal. But it was obvious from the start all blah 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 I watched too much Lupin III. This is a very action-packed flick with chases, explosions, gunfights, the lot. Though I feel the need for all this action affected the plot and not in a good way. Why is there a futuristic tower that's more of a city than tower with a football stadium and winter slopes and it feels a bit off for this tower to exist despite it being Lupin III and I've already seen some weird shit in part 2? So we can have Lupin snowboarding because the writer thought it would be cool and we need an explosive finale to boot. Did I mention that Lupin has an uncle named Philip who is in prison for trying to steal the book of Nostradamus? Well, don't you worry, he dies before we probably get to know him not long after, due to being tortured for information, and this character will never be mentioned in any future Lupin media. At least I assume. Why did Fujiko in the nude sleep with a freezing Lupin? For the trailers, because it doesn't go any further than that. Okay, it was probably also for the dads, just in case they got bored and needed a good old wake-up call. Why did we need a Fujiko that had amnesia? Because the movie couldn't think of any good ideas for her, and we needed her to get kidnapped in the stupidest way possible for this plot point to go nowhere. This young boy named Sergio helps the gang in a couple of scenes and is never mentioned again until the end, yet the movie wants me to care about him. Pops can't defuse a simple bomb, but can create a Lupin detector that can detect a thief? Sure, why not at this point? There was this black guy who tried to escape from prison with Lupin, and then he's dead. Who was he? Why did they even bother with him when he did nothing to advance the plot? Why did Jigen take his sweet time to kill Chris but just didn't? Because according to the gunman, God didn't give up on him. Jigen, it's not that God didn't give up on him, you just couldn't be bothered to shoot him in time. Why is there a Tiny Toons Adventures parody on the TV screen? Because TMS and Telecom helped with the animation for that show. Okay, admittedly that was a cool Easter egg. In short, it's another movie where it really needed some cutbacks to the plot to have more focus. And this urgency to make a needlessly bloated plot actually affects the main characters, as they're the same archetypes you know them for, with Lupin being Lupin with the addition of being pervy towards Fujiko, which is business as usual if you've been watching previous Lupin media. But the rest of the gang, in addition to Pops, feel one note, as if the movie is saying, you know who these characters are, they do what you'd expect them to do, enjoy the frills. The movie may not be as weird and experimental as The Mystery of Marmo, classy and game-changing like Castle of Cagliostro, or even as mad as The Legend of the Gold of Babylon, but the action, as well as the oddly decent pacing, kind of saves it from being a boring experience. For the other characters, we have the Lupin kid, Julia, who was a rather decent character. She has that annoying sister attitude which works for this movie when she's not the kid in distress. Not a fan of her calling Lupin a PDF file because 1, it's not true, and 2, the joke is just awkward and unfunny, though thankfully it's rarely used. Though if you know your Japanese, she's actually calling him a certain type of word. And I'm not even going to talk about that, but if you know, you know. Oddly enough, for the time we have with her, we find out that her life is kind of sad. Julia is the daughter of Douglas, though it feels that Douglas doesn't really care about her until he does, as he realizes her kidnapping gives him an advantage in the presidential polls. As close to an honest politician I've ever seen. Douglas is one of those characters who is an arsehole to the people he's supposed to care for until everything he's ever built falls apart in the end and all he has left is his family, another victim of the ever needlessly bloated plot. And then there's the antagonist, Risley, who is a crap villain. I prefer Silverman, and even he didn't do much. Yep, he's that bland, but it's his henchman Chris that does all the dirty work. He's a tough guy character that does indeed get the job done, and he's more of a threat when compared to other tough guy baddies like Robert Hawke and Keith Hayden. I'll at least remember Chris, since he has more screen time and does more to try and put a stop to Lupin and the gang. Now, the reason for this plot involving Risley and his Nostradamus pact was due to him and his cult being a negative critique on Aum Shinrikyo, a real-life Japanese cult led by Shoko Asahara, that also preached doomsday to poor unfortunate souls. 11 days before the film came out, Asahara and his cult attacked a Tokyo train using sarin, an extremely toxic nerve agent that led to the deaths of a number of people, injuring 50 plus, and caused temporary vision problems to 1,000 others. It was one of the deadliest terror attacks that happened in Japan, making this movie's critique on the cult and cult in general even more valid. The animation is pretty solid, and it's needed with the action scenes and quick fluid movements. And whilst I've seen better in the past like the Fuma Clan OVA, it still feels like it had a movie budget and it's all there to see. The character designs are a massive improvement over some of the latter TV specials I've covered before. It looks like it came from the 90s, but still cartoonish enough to not only be near faithful to the original manga style, but a much better evolution for these characters, which was a surprise to me, but welcoming all the same. Just a shame though that the animators suffered to make this one, as this movie took 8 months to finish, meaning people had to work overtime day and night to complete this on time. I don't like the fact that people had to sacrifice their health to make this and other anime. I know it's common in Japanese culture, but come on, you couldn't delay this? In fact, this was so taxing on Telecom, a division of TMS, that they refused to work on any more Lupin projects for almost 11 years until the 19th TV special, Elusiveness of the Fog. For the cast, the OGs are back minus Yasuo Yamada, and I'll get to Kurita in a bit. Julie was voiced by Yumi Adachi, an actress more known for live-action media in Japan, so there isn't much she's known for in terms of anime, though she was an actual child when she voiced Julie and not a 30-year-old trying to sound like a child. This is not a knock on the dub, by the way, I've never even heard much of that version. Hosei Komatsu voices Risley. He too is a live-action movie actor, voicing very few characters in anime. He's one of the major actors in this production who is no longer with us, passing away in 2003. Then there's Akio Otsuka, who voices Chris. Now, Otsuka has played characters in previous Lupin TV specials, and this is his third role for the series. He's voiced Solid Snake, Bato in Ghost in the Shell, Blackbeard in One Piece, and would return to the Lupin franchise much later to voice Jigen, replacing Kiyoshi Kobayashi. He also has the utter misfortune to dub for Steven Seagal. I mean, he does others like Nicolas Cage, but poor lad, having to voice that fat twat. The music by Yuji Ono is a massive improvement over a lot of his previous Lupin work. There's tracks I actually did enjoy, which was a surprise. But you can tell this is a 90s soundtrack, but he somehow made it work. And the ending theme, Ai no Suzuki, performed by Ayori Sakagami, is great. The best ED we got since Destiny Love. So, Kanichi Kurita. What do I think of his voice for Lupin? I'll say this, if I watched this movie and barely thought twice about the voice, then congratulations, you are worthy of the Lupin role, Kurita. He sounds a bit younger, though at times he sounds unsure of himself, which I can accept. It's not easy replacing someone as famous as Yamada, and much scrutiny is going to be placed on someone like Kurita, but other than that, I feel he'll do great once he's comfortable with the role. Overall, Farewell to Nostradamus is a highly entertaining movie with fun action scenes and some memorable moments to boot, but it came at the cost of the plot doing too many things that don't interest me and possibly other viewers, especially those who analyse plots even in a basic manner. It lacked a good balance between plot and action set pieces, and I do blame the rushed production, which can hamper and hurt any piece of media. Reminds me of The Legend of the Gold of Babylon and its production issues. Once again, it's a surprise that this came out better than it normally would have. That's impressive, but it's a shame that it caused Telecom to grow tired of animating for this series. Despite its many problems, I enjoyed my time with this flick, and Kurita did a good job as Lupin. Yamada may be gone, but he and his performance as Lupin III remain eternal. The next piece of Lupin media would have me return to the TV specials, but not just yet, as I've got one more movie to cover, Dead or Alive, and it would involve the original mangaka. I look forward to this one, and I'll see you next time.